At that point, I encounter a Holy Spirit moment. So I reach over her shoulder and cancel the Uber on her iPhone. And you say,
Well, I was kind of speechless.
What happens when God turns an ordinary encounter into a story written in heaven? Today's guests, Tamara and Joe Battaglia, know that story firsthand. Their divine connection began at an event neither planned to attend, a moment that changed both their lives. Tamara Hester Battaglia is the author and co-creator of Written in Heaven, a 40-day devotional featuring voices like Roma Downey, Priscilla Shirer, and Karen Kingsbury. Her husband, Joe, is a respected author, broadcaster, and media executive, president of Renaissance Communications, and executive producer of Keep the Faith, one of the nation's largest faith-based radio programs. His books, including The Politically Incorrect Jesus and Make America Good Again, challenge believers to live in conviction and compassion. Together, they share a powerful message about faith, purpose, and the way God writes our stories, one divine moment at a time. Joseph, Tamara, welcome to Seek, Go, Create.
well, Tim, so good to be with you.
Good to be with you.
Great for y'all to be here too. So here's a question I always have when I have him and her together. It's not a trick question, but who's the one that talks first usually?
I do.
Okay, Tamara, I'm going to ask the first question of you.
Okay. See, that was a trick question.
Yeah, that was a sort of a trick question.
Yeah.
Well, we were sort of joking when we first got started here. Y'all are like my second interview this week from Franklin, Tennessee. So I don't know when they're going to air, but people are going to say, hey, what are we on, like a Franklin, Tennessee streak or something? What is going on in Franklin? Because it seems like everybody's going there.
I think God's building an army here.
Really? Tell me
It
more.
just seems like more and more people are moving into Franklin, Tennessee. And I'm sure there's been a lot of advertising on tourists, and it's rated one of the top places to live in the U.S. And I guess that's it.
Well,
pretty
I
much.
think
Yeah.
more specifically, a lot of creatives are moving here.
Yeah.
The Christian film industry, which I've been involved in for the last 20 years, a lot of people involved in that industry have moved here, like the Irwins, of course. There are so many other artists from California moving here, a lot of people from Hollywood. So there seems to be a real attraction here, and it's becoming a hub for a lot of creative people in the faith space. And so obviously they're coming here because of the environment and the opportunity to be with people of like mind and heart. But it really is kind of fun and cool to have all this.
I just see it all the time. It's been a little while since I've been in and around that area, but kind of what Tamara said, like there seems to be kind of an army being built. And I do believe God moves in that way. I think that, there's people connected, there's momentum that occurs. I'm an engineer by training, so I speak in terms of things like momentum. I think there's momentum and, things start attracting and things like that. What brought y'all to the area? Because I think y'all said y'all been there less than 3 years or something like that. So y'all are fairly newer. So each one of you, Joseph, you could start. Each one of you, why did y'all come there?
Well, I've been coming down the Nashville area for my whole career. I was at the nation's stages of the contemporary Christian music industry back in the mid 70s in broadcasting. I was on the board of the Gospel Music Association for 20 years. And so I've been very familiar with Nashville and the areas around here. And I always loved Franklin. So it didn't take me much to be convinced to move out of New Jersey, where I've been my entire life, New York metro area. That was my mission field with radio, Christian music, a number of things. But then something happened. Well, pick it up from there.
Well, we met in Nashville, we got engaged in Nashville, and we got married here. And he also has family here. So we just felt like it was a great place to come. And I lived 61 years in Houston with my family. And so it was kind of a meet in the middle, Jersey and Houston. We met in the middle.
Yeah, I did kidnap her back to New Jersey for several years.
Yeah.
I wanted to show
Yeah.
her the other side of the world, what New York was about. But then one day she said, how about we consider moving to Franklin? Why don't we just rent for a while, see what happens? Well, as soon as we got down here, she lived on Zillow and started taking me around to all the new communities that were springing up. And when she set foot in this place, in our current home site, she said, this is it. You know how women have that nesting gene? Well, that gene was fully expressed. And so after 2 months down here renting, we decided to make the move and stay, and went back up and sold my townhome in New Jersey. And like the Clampetts, loaded up the van and came to Tennessee.
Loaded up and came to Tennessee like so many other people are doing now. It has to be getting a little bit crowded, is it?
I mean,
Well,
maybe a little,
well, compared to Houston and New York,
not even close.
Atlanta. I'm
But
in
I
Atlanta
will
right now.
say, moving here, he did give me a list of things like I want to be close to the city, I want to be close to Franklin, downtown Franklin. And he did give me a few things to look for when we were finding a home.
yeah. And this is such a cool town.
Great.
It's like I describe it to people as living in a Norman Rockwell painting. Very similar to that.
And how far is Franklin from Nashville Center?
Oh,
downtown Nashville.
25 miles maybe.
Yeah.
Pretty close.
Every time I buzz through Nashville as we're cruising around in the RV, I usually get in traffic. But then I'm sitting here in Atlanta right now, and I could tell you, last Sunday, rode out to the other side of Atlanta. Should have been a 45-minute drive to visit my mother in her 80s, and it took 2 hours because it was Atlanta
Yeah.
on a Sunday.
Well, yeah. Going downtown Nashville is becoming like that.
Yeah. And so we sort of just kind of get comfortable in our places and all. But what's fascinating about you two, we get some cool stuff come across our desk with our project we've got here, the podcast, and I get to talk to people like you guys. But y'all obviously are leading with the story of you two connecting. That is a big part of your story. If we want to get the true sort of vanilla story, I'm going to ask which one of you would tell that. But then if we want to, now we are we don't bleep things out or anything, so I'll allow for the saucy part of the story, but who tells the true vanilla version, and who could give a little bit with, just a little bit of a PG spice maybe?
Well, you know what? We we toss it back and forth.
Oh, well,
I normally
will
start.
I know when I have the spark and spice? I can already, I've read a little bit of it
Yeah,
already.
you'll get it.
So
You're a smart guy.
But
Go
there's a
ahead,
little bit
fire
of
away,
sauce and
man.
spice in both of us, so it may be
Yeah.
hard to tell at times.
So basically, I was producing an event for my friend Kathy Lee Gifford, who I've known forever. Kathy and I are longtime friends. We put it together down here in Nashville. It was an event at the Ryman Auditorium. And the night before that event, there was another event that was only for the board of this organization that sponsored this event. So it was a private affair. It was not open to the public. And then what happened?
I got a ticket to the event. And
Just
I got a
miraculously,
ticket,
or
and I got a ticket. I was getting a ticket for the Ryman event. And then I was online looking up who was singing. I knew Nicole C. Mullen was singing, and that was the main reason I came. And then also to see Kathy. because I knew she was going to be involved in it as well, because she had written a song called The God Who Sees. And if you ever heard it, it is a wonderful, amazing song, especially if you're a woman. You will really relate to this song. It's just so beautiful. But I was looking up who else was singing to that event at the Ryman, and this ticket came up for the night before at dinner. And so I bought a ticket. I didn't think anything about it. And about 5 minutes later, they called me and they said, "How did you get this ticket?" I said, "I don't really know. I was online," and told them the story. And they said, "Okay." I thought it was just a courtesy call to thank me for getting the ticket.
Yeah. And well, it was not supposed to be sold. Like I said, it was a private dinner for the board and guests. So she gets a ticket that she was not supposed to. So I show up at the event. I bring Kathy, bring her to the back door, the stage door, and the guy sponsoring the event lets her and her assistant in and then closes the door behind them and leaves me out. So, okay, I'll just go in the front door like everybody else. So I go in the door, stand in the line, and her sister is in that line in front of me and just starts talking with me. And then Tammy shows up. We go in, I take my place at a table. At the end, we all leave, right? I'm walking out the door, and she and her sister are standing at the curb waiting for an Uber. And I say, "Hi, ladies. May I drive you back to your hotel? My car is right here." And you say,
No.
No.
I will say one of the reasons I said no is because I had 1 minute for the Uber to get there. I didn't want to be charged. And I also I felt bad about canceling on the guy with only 1 minute to go. I was looking out for the Uber driver.
right, I was not looking
Very
out.
practical answer. Very practical,
I, of
wise.
course, was not looking out for the Uber driver.
He didn't care.
So I try again, and you say
No.
no again. So at that point, I encounter a Holy Spirit moment, or a part of my New Jersey upbringing. So I reach over her shoulder and cancel the Uber on her iPhone. And you say,
Well, I was kind of speechless.
so I say, "Well, now you have to let me drive you home."
I knew he was a nice guy and everything. I had my sister with me, and my sister, she actually had surgery on her one arm, so she had it in a sling. But growing up, she would take up for me and everything. And I thought, well, if anything happens, she could probably take him one armed.
Yeah, she's really
Easily.
tough.
So I wasn't really worried.
So we had a nice discussion on the way back to the hotel. Obviously, she Googled me immediately when she got back to her
Okay.
room. She was in the police department there in the Houston area. So she's naturally suspicious of characters from New Jersey, New York. She went and checked me out, saw that I was credentialed.
So when I hear stories like this, there's a couple things that come to my mind. And I think back to when I met my wife. I absolutely believe that the hand of God moves in situations like this. I believe that he equips many of us men to identify the beautiful woman that we're supposed to be with.
There you go.
And we will do incredible things. Sometimes not entirely nice or kind, like steal somebody's phone and cancel an Uber to make that happen. And so I'm not in any way, Joseph, trying to say that you weren't thinking incredible, great thoughts and all that. But my guess is she was just an incredibly attractive woman and you just really wanted to know her better, correct?
Sort of.
Well, the fascinating thing is, after we started dating, I realized he was not good at Ubers, like ordering an Uber. And I thought, I don't even know how you push the button on my Uber or
So the
even
fact that
found
you-
where to cancel it.
So the fact that he canceled is somewhat of a miracle.
That's true. So that's why I say there was something that said, do that. I wouldn't
Right.
normally have done that. But like you just said, at times things come over you that, maybe God is directing us in those instances where he leads us to do things, say things we might not ordinarily. And this is the fun part of our stories, right?
Yeah.
And then the next night we see each other at the event at the Ryman, and sitting in back of her. And then you say what?
I had an extra ticket, so I said, "You want to come sit with me?"
So she stalked me that night, and I did not make the move on her. So she wanted me to sit next to her. And of
Yeah.
course, I thought about that for a split millisecond.
Hmm.
You said
That long?
yes, yes,
Well,
yes. So something that's fascinating to me when we observe, notice, claim, whatever, that someone has been brought together like you two have. I I'd love to hear from both of you. What was God's purpose? What was he wanting to accomplish? What has it led to? That you can look back and go, you know what, this is what God had in mind. And it could be just companionship, but I suspect it's more than that. So, what do y'all think it is looking back now? How long has it been? Where are you at now as far as your time together?
Well, that was November 2019,
Okay.
right?
So 6+ years, which is, and the world's been through a lot during that time. So you've learned a good bit about not just each other, but other stuff. So what's the purpose? What was God thinking?
Well, certainly we believe he was thinking that this is written in heaven.
Yeah,
I mean,
which is
we
a
have
good
to
title.
believe,
Segue into a book we'll talk about here in just a second.
right? I was, going after the seg, but, maybe you'll continue at some other point. But so much happened to convince us of God's intervention in many other ways after that that we could go into, but that's up to you on the timing. So why don't you tell them about the flight to Jersey? Why don't you begin there, and that'll help build case for why we're together.
Okay. Uh, well, I'm my flight attendant. Joe got my digits that night, and he probably looked me up and didn't find anything. But he would send me texts when he was flying and say, "I'm on such and such flight, what's for dinner? Or, are you going to be on the flight?" And I was never on the flight. And so he did this for a couple of weeks. And then one day I was having my quiet time with the Lord, and I was actually taking a walk, and I just blurted out, "Well, God, if you want me to meet Joe again, then send me to Newark." And Joe had said, "If you're ever in Newark, I'll take you to dinner." And I said, "Well, I'm never in Newark. I try to avoid Newark at all costs." And I was from Houston, so I was based in Houston. So I would go to Newark and turn around and go right back to Houston. And I had not had a layover there in probably 4 years. But on my walk, I just blurted out one of those prayers that you pray that afterwards you're like, "What? What did I say?" That night I went to bed and I was on what we call reserve. So I was on 24-hour call. So I never knew where I was going or what flight I was going to be on until usually the last minute. I didn't have anything on my schedule when I went to bed. During the night, I got up and checked my schedule and I had a layover in Newark the next day. The next day. And I remember looking at my phone, I put it down. I was like, "I know, God, what I prayed, but I've changed my mind. It's okay. I thank you for answering that. I appreciate the effort." Anyway, I thought, well, God answered this prayer pretty quickly within 6 hours. And so I thought I better honor him and follow through. So I emailed Joe. Didn't hear from him for a little bit, and then I was actually closing the door on the plane and got to my seat and looked down, and he had said, "Sure, I'd like to take you to dinner tonight." So I flew into Newark, and we were supposed to go out and eat, and then it was snowing, so we chose not to meet, but just do a phone call.
And what did we talk about?
Well, it was a very awkward conversation. I was married 24 years and divorced, and then I was single for 17 years. And his wife, you want to tell him about your
Yeah,
wife?
my wife passed away 7 years ago. We had been married 37 years. And, I wasn't looking.
And I
Uh,
wasn't looking.
so uh,
And
we
it was
both,
like being in high school. It was like 10 minutes of like a high school conversation with a boy and a girl. And I'm like, I don't know what to say to him. And I could tell he didn't know what to say to me either. So we just talked for a few minutes and he asked me if I'd ever marry again. And I said, no. I said, Jesus is my husband. And no, I will never marry again. And I was pretty set in that, which God always has a sense of humor in my decisions. Joe said at one point, he said, well, if you ever want to talk about men, call me. And I thought, well, that's the strangest thing I've ever heard anyone say. And we hung up the phone and I thought, well, God, I did what I thought you asked me to do. But I really thought at that point that there wasn't any kind of a relationship or anything. Fast forward a few weeks, I was moving in with my daughter. She was getting ready to have a baby. And I thought I'd be like a nanny slash flight attendant for her and her husband. So I thought I'd move in with them. I was selling my home and I was going through memories and boxes. And I got really emotional and really started thinking about my life. And I remember what he said because it was such a random thought. And so I sat down and wrote him an email and just said, well, here's my story. And I wrote down my story. And I think because he was in Newark, it was more comfortable for me to share my story with him and I didn't think anything would ever happen. So he sent me an email. He said, well, let's talk tonight. So he called me and it was interesting. That conversation was like two old friends talking. He was sharing with me his journey. I was sharing with him my journey. There was tears. And at the end, he said, well, can I pray for you? And I said, sure. And he begins to pray for me, this blessing over me. And it was like Jesus said, I just felt like Jesus was saying, you need to hear these words and you need to receive these words. And he just had this beautiful prayer that he prayed over me. I went to bed that night and when I got in bed, I started writing down. I was trying to remember everything he said because I thought I need to reread this. I need to read this blessing again that he said. I woke up the next morning and he had sent me an email. And in the email, he had written down everything he'd prayed. So I felt like that was a pretty strong God wink as well. So we decided, maybe we should go and have dinner.
which we did in January, a month later then, because by that time it was December, right? So I had to be in LA on business.
And I just happened to be in LA too. I never am in LA, but I had some friends that were there. They were RVing and her
Yeah.
husband had gotten sick and nobody was there for them. And so I was flying out to meet with her.
And so I was going to be there. So I said, well, maybe we can actually do that dinner. So picked a nice restaurant because I've been in LA a number of times and there's a few nice places to hang out there if you want a nice dinner. And so we had dinner that night and it was just a wonderful time together that night and the following day. Then what did you come? Oh, you came to New York.
No, I went to the Ark.
Oh, what? Yes, I invited her.
Get the story straight.
Yeah.
I always
Sure.
get it backwards. One of the things I do, Patterns of Evidence is a filmmaking product that my friend Tim Mahoney does. He's a producer and he's created these beautiful movies about Israel and the life of the early Jews and the Exodus. And you may be familiar with some of his movies. I helped Tim produce panels afterward because he always aired them on Fathom with their theater productions. And so I was in charge of creating an after movie panel of experts talking about what they just saw as added value for the distribution of the movie that Fathom does for its clients. And so I produced a couple of those for Tim. And I was producing another one on his, I think it was the Red Sea Miracle.
Yeah.
And he was going to do it at the Ark, which you're probably familiar with, and a lot of your viewers. And I was in charge of, again, putting together the panel of experts. And so I asked my buddy Todd Starnes to moderate. I invited Kay Arthur, Janet Mefford, who was a talk show host, and a few other people. And I told her, this is what I am doing. And she said, I love Kay Arthur. I've done all her precepts. And said, well, why don't you fly out and meet us in Cincinnati? Because then it's a short ride over to the Ark in Kentucky. And she said, okay. And she went with me. She flew in. We met at the hotel, got her a room, and along with us, with the team there, and then went on the bus. There was a van that enabled us to go there. And so she was there, had a lot of fun, met Kay Arthur, who really loved her. She was just walking around holding her arm. And so I had to leave the next day for work. I left. Ken was going to take everybody on a personal tour of the Ark. Ken Ham, who of course runs it. And so she stayed for that. I thought that was cool. And met Tim Mahoney there, right? And his wife, Jill. And they're wonderful people. And why don't you pick it up from there?
Tim was producing his movie, The Red Sea Miracles. And they asked me, because Jill and I it was like two people meeting each other and just knowing that you were supposed to be sisters in Christ. But I mean, it was just like a draw. So we became really fast friends. And she asked me if I would help her at this convention called NRB, which is the National Religious Broadcasters. And I said, sure, I'd love to. I was off that week. I was like, sure, I'd love to do that with you. I came home and I'm sharing with him what I'm doing. And what do you say?
I said, well, NRB, I've only been there for 50 years and I'm on the board.
They have a plaque. Your name's on the wall, right?
Well, they
Yes.
do have a few awards he's been given.
And so, known to her, that was my top convention I've gone to since 1975. And so he brought her there to once again hang out with me. That's, a Providential miracle meeting number 5 at this point. And so
When you're the age that we are all at, I don't know that this term, were you dating? Were you interested? Were you boyfriend, girlfriend? What?
well,
were you
we
just
kind of
I mean,
friends?
we were I don't think we were boyfriend and girlfriend at that time. I think we were still kind of being cautious. We had met my friends, he had met my family.
she hadn't met my daughter, my
Or-
staff. We just liked each other, liked being with each other. And she liked the fun things I did. She liked my world, which I think is important.
Yeah. Yeah. So it
So-
sounds like y'all cautiously optimistic and taking steps just to see where it led.
Yeah.
Both optimistic, not looking for the reason it's fascinating to me, my wife and I just celebrated our 37th anniversary. And we don't really have discussions like, oh, what would happen if something happened to one of you and all that. But I every once in a while could be a odd dream or something. It's like, man, dating now, I wouldn't know what to do. Just like y'all said, the first phone
Yeah.
call, it's like, I don't even know what to say or any of that kind of stuff. So that's the reason
Exactly.
it's sort of fascinating. So at what point did y'all say, okay, we're a couple, let's commit?
Okay.
I mean, y'all are moving in that direction, it sounds like.
Well, right after NRB, the country
COVID.
shut down with
Yeah.
COVID.
Ooh,
For 4 months.
20. Yeah. You know what? I went to a podcasting conference down in Orlando, March 6th, 8th,
Probably was the last
Yeah.
week you could do anything.
2020. Yeah.
And so the fun thing is, while at NRB, we'd hang out. And we'd be having lunch one day, and 3 of my friends would walk by, female friends, who would say, something's going on here. There's something
know.
here.
They know. They
They
can
know.
tell.
And so the relationship was being corroborated by others who had a sense of what God was telling them when they saw
Mm.
us together.
They were coming in agreement.
And the wonderful thing for me is that I'm a very cautious person, very, very cautious. And for me to see women that truly respected him and really they were like his sisters, and they just really, you could just tell that there was a great love and affection for him. And, it's kind of rare, I mean, for women to respect someone as deeply as I could tell these women respected him. So he didn't realize that for me, I was really taking note of that. It was a very rare, you could just see the love and the respect and really the caring. They really cared about him.
So NRB is over. We go back to our respective places. The country shuts down. She's not flying. I'm not producing anything. I was doing a lot of promotion on Christian movies back then. Well, obviously, no movies were happening. So we just talked to each other every day and FaceTimed each other for 4 months. And that grew into a really cool friendship. And then it was time to decide fish or cut bait. Really.
Did you actually say that?
Did
Did
I
that
say
come out of
that?
your mouth?
Did I say fish?
I-
No, I don't think so.
Things were looking great, and then, okay, it's time to fish or cut bait. Come on.
You
But
know,
one thing about being separated for 4 months, it was great because it was just like two friends visiting with each other, and really it grew our relationship. But also we started we took the love language test to see what our love language was. And we took other tests to see, how compatible we were. And so that was a great opportunity to kind of just sit back and go, let's just see,
Yeah.
if we really are compatible. And
and we
You know,
were.
one thing during that time that I observed was that it was a time that people got more still and quiet than most of us had ever been. My wife and I looked at each other, speaking of God doing things, we said, we were not sure why, after we went to Bible school for a couple years in Colorado, why he told us to move into an RV, and then the world shuts down and we're socially distanced already. And we look at each other, we go, this is kind of interesting and fascinating. And so you're quiet and still, because I'm not sure that in the day to day, y'all would have had the opportunity to develop a relationship
Right.
that rapidly.
Mhm.
Correct?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when we spoke twice a day, there was nothing for me to do. So I'd go for walks in the afternoon. Same with her. And then at night, there was nothing really to do at home work wise. So we talked again. And by the summer in June, we both felt that it was time to make a decision here. And the first thing was for her to come see my daughter, who by that time was, she was about
30.
31, had a great job in New York City and pretty sharp young lady. My daughter did not like me wanting to go out with anybody prior to that. And my staff, who have been with me for many, many years,
Since the 80s.
yeah, they all loved her. And so that convinced me that others feel the same way about her as I felt. And then it was time for me to go down to Houston and meet her family. And we had a good time.
So, one thing odd about these situations, my wife and I, in our 40s, lived in a retirement community. We had people around us halfway between Atlanta and Augusta. And one of the things we observed is there were a few couples that were mature. At the time, I would have said they were old. Now I would say they were just mature, because I'm their age now. And we noticed that a few couples that had been separated or had deceased spouses or whatever were interacting, coming together. And a few of them, their grown children were not excited. Some were worse than not excited.
Yeah.
So I bring that up to say harmony, everybody good with it. See, I couldn't grasp that because I'm like going, okay, these are adults here. This is, you know, ma or pa are just interacting with someone. They're playing golf where we were. It was a golf community. It's like, come on. But everybody's good with it.
Well, so my daughter and son-in-law, they were fine with it. You know, my daughter had just had a baby, and so I did get to babysit the baby. I took care of her for the first 5 months, and I've been very fortunate to be able, with my job, to be able to go see them quite a bit, like every other month. But the fascinating thing was the night of the rehearsal dinner, so to speak. We had dinner with everybody, the whole family, and I was like, "Oh, I don't know if that's gonna go." But our daughters are both very independent. My daughter's an OBGYN. His daughter is in advertising, and she manages a team of people. And so they're very much alike. They're very different, but they're very much alike. And so they hit it off so well that I looked at Joe at one point and I thought, I don't think we're ever going to get a word in edgewise. I mean, it was fascinating to watch that they just zoom. So that was another beautiful thing for us because I understand what you're saying. It's like, I don't know, this might go one way or the other.
It
So
is
that
tough.
was a
So,
great blessing and a great comfort.
Yeah.
And we just got
yeah.
through in May going on a big family. We went to Rosemary Beach with the whole family. So it was just great fun.
Yeah. And I think one last thing we can say on this story that puts a bow in it. When it was time to propose, we met with some friends in Colorado with Ken and his wife. Ken was the president of Promise Keepers back then, good pal. And, they were wondering, well, what's next for you guys? And his wife happened to say, well, I'm a jewelry broker,
Diamond broker.
a diamond broker, even better.
Even better.
And a few weeks later, she sent me this beautiful diamond. And the price that she gave me was incredible. So now I have a ring at an incredible price to give to her. So I called Kathy. Tammy and I were meeting in Franklin again for an event I was doing. And so I called Kathy, who lives here in Franklin, Kathy Lee. I said, hey, I've got the ring. I'm going to propose. How about we come over? You want to have some fun with this with her? And Kathy's always about having fun. So we went over just on the pretext that we were just going to say hi. So on cue, she starts singing the Beyonce tune, Put a Ring on It. So you have Kathy Lee Gifford singing that song to you. And I get down on my knee and propose. She, of course, says yes. And then Kathy starts taping this on her iPhone, filming it, and asking us questions as if she's interviewing us on a show.
Of course.
So we have about 15, 20 minutes of the proposal, the interview, and that is how we got engaged. So,
Well, I love all of that. I want to ask one more question about that, and then I want to talk a little bit about industry and written in heaven and a few things like that, some books and things. But one of the things that we don't shy away from here at Seek Go Create is the tough things and the challenges. What's been the biggest challenge up to this point? I mean, this is we've told a great story and it's awesome. I'm sure every day is awesome, but this is also, bringing together a couple of families and there's work and there's situations. And, sometimes when we're of a certain age or even younger, we can sort of be set in our ways. I'm not asking y'all to air out dirty laundry, but each one of you give just maybe a challenge that, can make this real to people.
well, frankly, this has been rather easy and fun, frankly. I think because God puts us together, we both have a respect for what marriage is about. We understand the covenant that goes with it, that whatever I do to you, you do is done to me. So the way we treat each other is the way we reflect ourselves. And I think people have to understand that the oneness that embodies Christian marriage, biblical marriage, is that you realize that the Trinity and marriage is the only place in the universe where plural is singular. So when they see one, they see the other, and vice versa, right? So I think we came at it from because we're older.
Mature. We use the
Yeah.
word
And
mature.
we've both been through, I mean, I went through the bad circumstance of losing my wife, right? And I learned a lot of things during that, where you serve somebody and you learn about your own selfishness. Well, you know, normally you get into a marriage and you find out about your selfishness. So I think the idea of what we learned, we really don't have a whole lot of issues and problems because we're just having a great time. And after 5.5 years, it still is that.
I think we're both very
Excuse me.
grateful for the Lord bringing us together. I mean, we could have never orchestrated this ourselves. And I laugh because I'm a flight attendant, so I'm pretty easygoing.
You see a
Um,
bunch of junk, right?
yeah, it's like whatever. Joe was such a unique individual because most gentlemen would have a lot harder time adjusting to life with a new person, letting go of the past. It was fascinating to me how he was able to just adapt. Obviously, he had hard moments, but he had this beautiful spirit about him. He was ready, and I can't even say enough about him, about how he just went with it. And I mean, I've had a
So,
lot of friends that, theirs has not gone as well.
yeah,
Quite the struggle because you've had such a past with other people. And it's hard to let go of the past sometimes. And I think
right.
for me, I had been single long enough that God had healed me. I think it's very important when you go into a marriage that you need to be healed from whatever your past has been. It's very important. And I
S-
was very
So that you don't,
grateful.
so that you don't bring that
Yeah,
into the
yeah,
relationship from
yeah.
others. So at some point, you looks like you made the decision to do some writing or collaborating or working with someone. Tell me how that started, the impetus of it, because writing. I mean, I've written some things. I've written a novel and other things like that. Writing is. I don't want to say it's hard. It actually is hard.
It's
Where
hard.
how did that come about?
Well, when Joe and I were merging all of our belongings and our lives and our many, many books, we had a bookshelf that I had put together that was all of our female author friends. And some were my friends. I mean, some were books that were people that that women that had inspired me. And many of them were his friends. And so it was just a shelf with all these many different women of the Lord that have amazing ministries and just have really blessed my life through the years. And I was up on a ladder dusting, which, that doesn't happen too often on a ladder, but decided was I in dust in my microfiber cloth and I'm dusting and I'm thinking, I had never heard of some of these authors that he had, friends of his that were female. I was like, I've never even heard their stories. And then knowing Joe, I've met them and I was just so inspired and just they were riveting their stories, how God had done things in their life. And it really moved me, moved my heart. And I thought, gosh, wouldn't it be great if we could put them all in one book? And then that way you could read 40 different women and their stories, how God had walked them through a hard time or given them a miracle or an angel that was brought into their life that they knew that this person had to be an angel. There's just so many different stories of their journey with their walk with the Lord. At the same time, my daughter was having another baby. And every morning I would read Psalms 139, 13 through 19, where it says, all of my days were written in God's book and planned before a single one began. And I would just sit there and wonder how this precious little baby, how God would walk through their life and ordain their steps, just like he had done in my life. There's many times in my life, I've had some wonderful times in my life, and I've had some really hard times in my life. And many times in my life, it's been a mystery to me why God did what he did for the good and blessings or not. And I think we all have that in our life where we wonder why God did this or why did this have to happen? It's beyond our understanding. But because it said written, and I just thought written in heaven. And then also Luke 10:20 says, rejoice because your names are written in heaven. And I just thought that was a beautiful verse. And so that's how it became. And then I thought his story, our lives, because it's his story. Our lives are his story.
So, how did the compilation occur? Was it, this is a little bit of a technical thing. Did you interview? Did you write? Did you have them, I'm curious about that.
Sure. I wrote my own story. And then we wrote down a list of women that I really was wanting to be in the book. As we reached out to them, some could do it, some couldn't. Some were in the middle of writing their own books, so they could not contribute to the book. Many of them are his friends, and many of them really love him, respect him, and they were more than willing to write their story because of their relationship with him and how much they respect him.
Was this I'm assuming this was kind of the first project like for you, Tamara?
Oh,
Have you done
absolutely.
anything like that?
Yeah.
So,
So he went to we had a meeting with the publisher for his book,
yeah,
and he mentioned to the publisher, said, well, my wife's got an idea. Why don't you share it with him? And I'm like, what?
like a promoter.
Yeah.
Yeah, just always promoting, right?
And I just said, well, it's called Written in Heaven, His Story, Our Lives, and this is what it's about. And he goes, I love it. Let's do it. And I was like, okay.
So we got her the book deal.
Some
But the
good job.
fascinating
Good,
thing, he's
good representation there.
Yeah.
but Joe's a journalist. So God
I
prepared
know.
me with a guy that could help me with all of it. And we began reaching out to these women and leaving their stories. And what was fascinating is the women that we reached out to, once they contributed their stories and I got to looking at all the stories, everyone was different. Everyone was unique. And we had almost every life situation in this book. It was just crazy. And I don't know if you can see some of the names are Roma Downey, Karen Kingsbury, Priscilla Shire, Sheila Walsh, Lisa Robertson, Jen Lilly, Nicole Crank, Lauren Green, Michelle Pilar, Patty Reed, Kim Crable. There's just such an array of women in this book. And then also, I just can't even say enough about their stories. I mean, God just wove this book together and all the stories to where whatever you're going through in life, someone in this book has already gone through it. And you can see how God worked it all out for good for them.
Did you learn anything about yourself, Tamara, while you're compiling and putting this together? More
It's
about
difficult.
us as the author. What'd you learn about yourself?
Whew. Well, I'm learning I can do hard things. This is my 5th interview. This is my first time doing any kind of interviews. So I'm learning how to present myself, I guess I should say. A lot of
You're doing
prayer,
great.
a lot of prayer, because I wanted to honor and glorify the Lord. And I love the women in this book and I love their stories. And we're all on a unique journey called life. And God wrote my story so different than your story. And so it was truly an honor to do this, even though it was hard. But like I said, God gave me an incredible man that could help me. And I will say this, a lot of the women are authors anyway. So we really didn't have to edit too much. It's really wonderful to see that these women, we didn't really have to do much to their story or even help them with it because it just it all fell together quite easily for me. This is the hard part, doing the interviews for me.
Yeah, because I'm grilling you. I'm just coming
No,
at you
you're not
hard
grilling it
here.
at all. No, this is
So
quite.
so so Joseph, one of the things that popped to me, this might be my last question. We'll see. We're butting up against time here, but how cool you've worked with a lot of people. You've done a lot of stuff. You've had a long and rich career. How cool is it? Because I know you were involved with the project. Your name isn't on it, but I know you're involved. How cool was it working together on a project like this?
I think it's one of the best things I've ever done,
Mm.
really.
And
I
it would
sense
not have been
that.
possible
I,
without him.
I don't think that's bull. I mean, I'd call bull if I thought it was, but I don't think that's bull.
Because not about me.
Mm.
And I think it's fun when we go outside of ourselves to do something to lift others up. And I think that's part of what we miss in our culture, right? Particularly when it's someone like her who never had anybody to affirm her abilities, her gifting, what she could do. So now we come together in this providential way, and I see something in her. My job is to disciple her. I think that's a good representation of what God asks the man to do in this relationship. And the fun thing was watching her grow from, I can't even talk to the publisher about this because what's he going to think, or what if he doesn't like it? You know, from a hesitant, unknowing of what is her capability to someone who just carried on pretty good conversation with you. And I've seen her grow just in these 3, 4 interviews that we've done, confidence and articulation, and you're ready with the answer. Because the idea is that you can't plan well enough. Because the most important things and the most articulate things usually happen, not because you've written it out and read it, but God and through the Holy Spirit speaking through you at the appropriate time for what is on your heart to say. And this is the enjoyable thing that's why I just I'm sitting back grinning because I see God working. And that's one of the
Yes.
most important things that we could have, even after all the things I've done, as you alluded to, and all the programming I've created and all the interviews and all the whatever programs I've produced, you never get tired of seeing God work in the right way in someone's life. It's like, hearing a testimony. You never get tired of that. At least I don't. Because I think if you keep the awe in that, then that spreads out into the relationship. And I think it's a way of honoring, her. And the more I build her up, I build myself up. Again, going back to that principle that I mentioned earlier, anything I say to her and do to her is a self reflection.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, absolutely. What's interesting is that I obviously talk a little bit. Joseph, you talk a little bit. See, in my mind, being a flight attendant is the hardest thing of all three of the people sitting here in this call. Hey, y'all fly. I'm going, good gracious, these people, that is one of the hardest things ever. So this is pretty easy, but I do love how preparation, you mentioned how just kind of stepping out and doing something. And we started this conversation with someone doing something, sticking their neck out, canceling an Uber ride type thing. And I do believe that that extraordinary effort is rewarded, and especially when there's a faith component behind it. And so I think that's cool. What is next for Joseph and Tamara? Just something cool, each one of you that you have that's just coming up on the horizon.
Oh.
We're getting by day.
I love it.
I have plenty of things that I still want to write.
Oh, the business Bible.
Oh, well, the Business
Yeah.
Bible is our biggest project.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever even heard about that.
Mm.
It's an incredible, it'll be the next big product you hear about when we launch later next month. You very rarely get to work on a Bible project of this caliber where a friend of mine and I sat down for a year and a half, scoured scripture, and he, former Wall Street guy who found 100 biblical principles in scripture that they use on Wall Street in finance and investing and so forth. So it is in the NASB version with all these principles and everything. Think topical Bible. There'll be an AI component to the app of correlating biblical principle to news, of business news of the day that we get through Bloomberg, Wall Street Journal, and so forth. And the AI component of helping you understand how to apply that principle to your everyday business language. This is a legacy project. I think this is rather cool, and that's what I have my eyes on right now, along with a few other book projects, because I really want to write. That's how I enjoy the most. So for me, that's that. And you, my dear?
I'm
Me.
just promoting the book.
Well, and having fun doing it, right? And
Yeah,
so,
I am. I'm getting there. This is a little out
Joseph,
of my, comfort zone. So I'm really
all right, I'm gonna allow
rely on
you to
the
do a
Lord.
little. Tell us where we can find it, and where people can get the book.
You can get it on Amazon, and it is in Barnes and Noble. It is a part of the Choice books. I'm not really sure where all they are, but my understanding is there's the little
But the rack job.
round with all the devotionals on it.
Yeah, the rack jobs.
Yeah.
In
And they're
stores.
supposed to be
Airports
everywhere.
and places like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
CBD carries it too, Christian book, and then
And
everybody,
then Target, Walmart.
the usual
nice.
places.
The thing that I love, and we've done some work with authors from Broad Street, man, I love the way they publish, and the books just feel so good. And so that is excellent. Well, thank you both for joining me, and definitely when this next project comes out, Joseph, I might want to talk about that. I mean, we're business and leadership here primarily, so this is a great topic for our people, for our listeners. I appreciate both of you. It's been a great conversation. I love the story, and I love God preparing the two of you to come together. And it's kind of why I was really intrigued by what God is preparing you for in the future, because I believe there's big things there. So congratulations for that. We are Seek, Go, Create here. It's been a great conversation here. We're on YouTube. We're on all the podcast platforms. We release every Monday. And so I thank you all for joining me here. Until next time, thank you for joining us here at Seek, Go, Create.